It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che for Arirang News. Let's start with the headlines. Forced into the public eye by the Song Wan-jong scandal, and with some lawmakers demanding his resignation, Prime Minister Wan-koo decides to call it quits. In Peru, President Park Geun-hye held summit meetings to discuss expanding cooperation in national defense, trade, and infrastructure, and more. And Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe remains adamant on not apologizing for wartime atrocities in his World War II anniversary statement in August, despite criticisms from various U.S. media outlets on the dangers of rewriting history. Let's start with our first story this evening. Embattled Prime Minister Wan-koo has offered to step down over allegations of bribery and growing calls for his resignation from the ruling and opposition parties. Our Park Ji-won starts us off.
The Prime Minister's office said Lee conveyed his intent to step down to President Park Geun-hye late Monday night. The surprise decision came with both political camps increasing the pressure on Lee to resign voluntarily. The main opposition party has said it would seek the Prime Minister's impeachment at the Assembly this week. On Monday, some senior ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers also called for Lee to vacate the position. With the resignation tendered, Deputy Prime Minister Choi Kyung-hwan led Tuesday morning's cabinet meeting in place of Lee. President Park, who's on a four-country tour of South America, has expressed deep regret over Lee's resignation. She called on the cabinet and the presidential office to ensure there's no administrative vacuum, and once again urged the prosecution to conduct a stern investigation into the bribery allegations as part of political reform, implying she will accept Lee's resignation when she returns home from her South American trip next week. Calls for Lee to step down were triggered by a suicide note led by businessman and former politician Song Wan-jong on April 9th. At the time, Song was being investigated for creating illegal slush funds through a failed energy project that was greenlit by the Lee Myung-bak administration. In his note, Song listed names of 8 high-profile ruling conservative politicians whom he had allegedly bribed, including Wan-koo. The Prime Minister is accused of accepting cash worth roughly $27,000 in 2013 when he was running for a seat in the National Assembly. Lee submitted his resignation after just 63 days in office, one of the shortest tenures for a prime minister in Korean history. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Korea's two rival parties are in agreement over Prime Minister Wan-koo's voluntary resignation. According to our Kim Young-gil, they expressed relief and called for a thorough investigation into the burgeoning graft scandal.
The ruling Saenuri Party said Tuesday that it was unfortunate that Prime Minister Wan-koo had to step down from his post, but said the choice was inevitable for the sake of the country.
The ruling party firmly believes that the so-called Song Wan-jong bribery scandal must be thoroughly investigated. We once again urge the prosecution to conduct a speedy and thorough probe into the graft scandal.
The ruling party's floor leader, Yoo Seung-min, said the party is willing to launch an independent council investigation into the scandal if the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party agrees to do so. The main opposition party has not replied to that suggestion, but said the prosecution should take all measures to get to the bottom on the scandal.
The resignation of Prime Minister Wan-koo is not the end, but the start of the probe. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy will do all it can to reveal corruption involving officials from President Park's administration.
However, lawmakers with the main opposition party may face similar bribery allegations, as suspicions grow that Song may have been paying kickbacks to members of both parties for years. Prime Minister Lee's resignation comes more than a month after he declared an all-out war on corruption, promising to mobilize government resources to root out bribery. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And now that Lee has offered to step down, the prosecutor's investigation will likely speed up. Investigators summoned Song Wan-jong's closest aide on Tuesday. He is also a former executive member of the deceased businessman's company, Gyeongnam Enterprises. Prosecutors think the aide may know key information about the bribery allegations made in the late businessman's suicide note. A team of prosecutors also raided the headquarters of Sang's company for the third time on Tuesday to secure evidence such as CCTV recordings, computer hard disks, and documents including meeting minutes. Prosecutors plan to summon other close aides in the near future, including Sang's secretary and personal driver. Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye, who is touring 4 countries in South America, is currently in Peru. At their summit meeting on Monday, the leaders of Korea and Peru agreed to expand their partnership beyond trade and investment. Our Choi Yoo-sun files this report from Lima.
While Korea's first production in Peru of its trainer jet, the KT-1P, will be celebrated during President Park's visit, Xi and Peruvian President Ollanta Humala agreed to work together on Lima's advanced trainer jet project in the future. Korea Aerospace Industries is currently helping Peru acquire 20 trainer aircraft under a $200 million deal. This, officials say, could pave the way for KAI to sell its FA-50 light combat planes to Peru as Lima seeks to bolster its defense capabilities. Aside from this, Korea sealed a deal with Peru to help develop a telemedicine service model for a large number of Peruvians who have no access to a medical facility. This will give Korean medical equipment manufacturers a chance to launch their business in the region. Under its development strategy, Peru plans to inject $100 billion into building infrastructure until 2021.
우리는 상생 협력의 확대를 통해서 페루의 국가 발전 전략 달성을 적극 지원해 나가고자 합니다.
Deal signed Monday will take Korea a step closer to win development projects for Lima's water management and electricity distribution systems worth as much as $4 billion. On the cultural front, Korea's global broadcaster Arirang TV and Peru's most watched America TV signed a deal to share content and to co-produce with an aim to promote Korean culture beyond K-pop throughout the continent.
In a display of highest respect for each other, President Park conferred Korea's Grand Order of Mugunghwa to President Humala, who in turn gave Park Peru's top Grand Collar, usually awarded to the country's independence patriots. President Park will depart for Chile, the third leg of her South America tour, on Tuesday. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News, Lima.
Korean pharmaceutical and medical products are set to gain ground in the Peruvian market as well, with a reduction to the local drug ministry's approval period coming soon. On Tuesday, Korea's welfare ministry said the Peruvian government is implementing an executive order to speed up Korea's listing on the countries of high surveillance list. Once that's accomplished, it will take less than 3 months for the Peruvian drug ministry to authorize Korean pharmaceutical and medical products. The welfare ministry said demand is growing in the relatively new Latin American medical market, which grew at an average of 13% annually from 2009 to 2013. A North Korean patrol ship crossed over the de facto inter-Korean maritime border early Tuesday morning after suffering an engine malfunction. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the ship drifted to the southern side of the so-called Northern Limit Line, or NLL, at around 2:40 a.m. Korea time. The North notified the South Korean military that the ship was having some trouble. With the South closely monitoring the proceedings, the ship was towed back across the NLL by another North Korean vessel. Officials say the situation is now resolved and there was no exchange of fires. Japan is stirring up tensions in the region again. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sent a ritual offering to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine in Tokyo, sparking angry responses from Korea. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
Korea's foreign ministry slammed Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Tuesday for sending a ritual offering to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine.
Japanese leaders must be aware that by paying their respects at the shrine, they are going against international norms and violating international order.
The shrine is a memorial to Japan's war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals. Visits there by Japanese leaders always anger Seoul and Beijing, the victims of Japan's past militarism. Japan declined to comment on the issue.
As this is something done by the Prime Minister as an individual citizen, the government has nothing to say about it.
Scores of conservative Japanese lawmakers are set to pay their respects on Wednesday. By sending an offering instead of visiting the shrine in person, Experts say Abe is trying to satisfy his conservative supporters and his neighboring countries.
What he's saying there is, I still have my supporters. I still have people who brought me to power who have some very funny ideas, but I didn't go to Yasukuni. So why don't you invite me over and we'll have a summit.
The move comes as U.S. media outlets call on Abe to address Japan's wartime atrocities. The New York Times published an editorial saying the success of Abe's visit to Washington depends on whether he faces up to Japan's wartime past, while the Washington Post, in a similar column, blamed the Japanese leader for stirring up regional tension. On Monday, Abe said in a TV interview that he sees no need to repeat the apologies of his predecessors on Tokyo's wartime history. But Seoul's foreign ministry said it remains hopeful that Abe will not miss opportunities like his speech at the U.S. Congress next week to correct Japan's distorted sense of history in an international setting. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And Japan's historical issues won't be the only important topic of discussion when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe addresses the U.S. Congress next week. Economic concerns are expected to claim a part of the spotlight, with the focus on a major Asia-Pacific free trade agreement. With more, here's our Kwon So-ah.
Closer to an agreement on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. That's what Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is saying about Tokyo and Washington's status on the 12-country Free Trade Pact, one of the main goals of President Barack Obama's trade agenda. Abe's statement follows two-day marathon meetings between Washington's trade representative and Tokyo's economic and fiscal policy minister. They convened this week in Japan to discuss remaining challenges on agricultural imports and automobile trade. Abe told the Wall Street Journal on Monday that gaps have been significantly narrowed, but he's looking for more progress when he visits the U.S. next week. In regards to summit talks with President Obama slated for April 28, where the TPP will be a key agenda, Abe said he has high hopes but acknowledged there are still hurdles. Bilateral talks on the TPP failed to reach a deal in April last year due to issues involving access to Japan's rice market. For Japan, the TPP is seen as a necessary measure to restructure the country's economy. For Washington, it's an important counter to the China-led FTAAP, which has the potential to become one of the world's largest free trade agreements. South Korea previously expressed interest in the TPP, but denied a Washington Post report last week, which claimed that Korea had made a request to join the pact. So far, there have only been 3 rounds of preliminary TPP talks between Washington and Seoul. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Trade between Korea and Japan has been decreasing since the year 2011 due to the weakening Japanese yen. New figures released Tuesday show that it's still plummeting, but experts say that Korean businesses may find a silver lining in that weak yen. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
According to data released by the Korea Trade Association on Tuesday, business between the two countries dropped roughly 14% in the first quarter compared to the same period last year, totaling a little over $18.4 billion. That decrease is hurting Korean exporters.
Korean products have lost price competitiveness due to the weak yen, drastically decreasing exports. Secondly, Korea's sluggish economy forced a reduction in key Japanese imports. Korea has also been diversifying its export market to China, which in turn took a toll on Korea-Japan trade overall.
Here's how that played out over the first quarter. Exports plunged 22%, with petroleum products taking a particularly big hit, dropping nearly 55% due to the slump in global oil prices. Meanwhile, imports shrunk almost 9%, with Japanese pig and scrap iron plunging roughly 47%. Korean firms are now looking for ways to rejuvenate trade.
From an import perspective, Korean firms need to take advantage of the weakening yen and invest more in Japanese plants and equipment. For exports, Korea needs to increase technical cooperation to obtain the source technology in order to enhance product quality and competitiveness.
Trade between the two countries reached an all-time high of $108 billion back in 2011. Since then, it's been on a steady decline. Experts say that if the yen continues to drop, the decline in trade could get worse. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan vowed to continue the ministry's expansionary monetary policies until Koreans start feeling more confident about the local economy. In his report to the National Assembly Tuesday, Choi stated that the government will spend 59% of this year's budget by June. Choi says he sees signs of improvement in the economy compared to the sluggish growth in the fourth quarter last year, but adds there are still lingering risks, including the decelerating rate of Korean exports to China. 1 in 6 Korean seniors are now living in almost complete isolation. That's according to a survey conducted by the Ministry of Health and Welfare over the first 3 months of this year. After speaking with 740,000 seniors who live alone, the ministry found that nearly 16% had almost no contact with their families. In fact, those who did keep in touch with their families only met them once or twice a year. The survey also found that about 4,300 seniors couldn't afford more than 2 meals a day. In response to the survey, the ministry is going to provide special services for these isolated senior citizens, including weekly visits, psychotherapy, and emergency hotlines. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching. For more, do join us again at 10 p.m. Korea time.